The Center for Educational Media and the College of Education at Middle Tennessee State University are proud to offer professional development to K-12 educators in Tennessee through our online video library. The following video is presented by the Center for Educational Media in partnership with Professional Educators of Tennessee's Leader U Conference. For more professional development videos, check out our website at cem.mtsu.edu.
So if you were here earlier, you already heard my husband talk about some of the ways that he inspired children and his competitive teaching model, which I'm going to bring in. We've worked together in different ways to empower our kids and kind of motivate them and make sure that they're learning at their fullest potential. So I'm going to go ahead and show you how I introduced the competitive teaching model in my middle school students. So I'm going into my 12th year of education now. I'm actually going to be a literacy coach for my school. So this is the first time that I won't be teaching children directly, but I'm hoping that my stamp as a literacy coach will allow me to reach even more students than the potential students that I reach yearly. I've taught grades 7 all the way through 12. The only grades I've never taught would be juniors. That's the only grade I've never taught. I originally started teaching in Florida, and that's why I had a huge population of ELL students. I had a lot of Serbian students, Bosnian students in Jacksonville, Florida. I also had a lot of students from South America. So I grew up with, I started teaching with a huge ELL population, and I felt at home. I was like, you need this kind of stuff? I totally understand, because I too needed this kind of stuff. That's some of the stuff that I've done. I'm all about empowering teachers. I'm all about empowering students, so I find a way to get into some sort of fellowship, if not every year, every other year, and I'm trying to sharpen my saw. I want to be a fantastic leader, and I really want to give education a positive light. Also going on, I'm actually here doing the Literacy Studies PhD, and that right there is my flag, because I was actually born in Malawi, and it is on the east side of Africa, towards the bottom. There's only one country that separates Malawi from South Africa, and the way that I like to explain it is, you know where Madagascar is, that little island over there? If you were to stick it back on Africa where it broke off originally, Malawi would be close to the area where Madagascar originally was. Okay, enough about me. Let's talk about the demographics of my district. I work in Metro National Public Schools, and 70% of our students are socioeconomically disadvantaged. 48% of them are African American, 33% Caucasian, 16% Hispanic, and 3% other. And that other can mean lots of things. It can mean mixed race for students, or it can mean Asian, because Asian wasn't actually their own population here. And this is from 2014. So things might have changed a little bit. So this is what our district looks like. When I first started teaching in our district, the school that I was at actually does not even look like this. So when I first started teaching, I was teaching in a school in East Nashville, and it was 98% free and reduced lunch. So where it says 70% socioeconomically disadvantaged, that's most of our district. But my school, it was almost every single one of my kids. And we only had, 500 students. So literally when you say that 98% of them are on free and reduced lunch, that's like 3 students or something that that aren't. So basically every kid you ran into had a disadvantage right there starting off. And then my school was also 90% African American. So even though I said I taught at a diverse school, well, really was it diverse? Technically, no. Technically diverse compared to maybe other schools, because it's a little bit different. Okay, sure, but definitely the population itself was predominantly African American, predominantly disadvantaged. So there were a lot of things that I was not used to when I first came to Metro National Public Schools. Originally, when I was in Florida, I had taught at Wolfson High School, and I had taught there for 4 years, and that school had made the paper for the most gang activity. And I didn't realize at the time, maybe it's because I was young and optimistic and just had my blinders on, how dangerous that school was when I first started teaching there. I was like, what? No, I love kids. We're going to do this. And so I'll give you a quick little story so you understand just how awesomely dangerous my first school was, but I had no idea about it. I used to be the girls soccer coach at Wolfson High School down in Florida, and we had this wonderful game. And it was, you know, I told you we had a population of foreign students, a huge population of foreign students, and they made up a great population of our soccer team. And they love soccer, right? Americans, we might not like soccer, but everybody else loves football, all right? So here we are, they're battling. This soccer game is with our rival school that's only like a block that way and over and across the railroads. And so they're really aggressive in this game. We end up winning, of course, but they weren't happy. They get into a fight. Some of the boys push other boys. A kid breaks his leg in this fight on the field. The ambulance is coming. They're yelling in all kinds of languages. They're getting their friends. They're getting their uncles. They're getting their dads. They're all coming up here. And that was the start of that. But we had seen many fights. So I was like, okay, well, they're just going to fight. We're going to separate this. We're going to cool it off. We're fine. Well, then all of a sudden I hear guns. I hear pop, 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 pop. Because these kids are neighborhood kids, so they all live in the neighborhoods that surround our school, and you can just hear guns going off. Pop, 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 pop. And I was like, okay, maybe those are fireworks. No, of course they're not fireworks. They're guns, okay? So we're hearing this, and that's when we're starting to panic. We're like, well, what is this? What has this game turned into? We go towards the end of our school, so we leave the field because now we've managed to get our student who broke his leg into an ambulance because it was such a huge fight. We're like, we need to get him medical attention. And when we're leaving, I go to the back parking lot, and this huge gang of kids and relatives comes up. They've got weapons with them, and they're yelling, and the kids behind us are yelling, and somebody throws one of those homemade, I don't know how to say it correctly, but it has, say it again? Yes, they throw that, hits a car, and the car goes boom. And then I was like, is this real life? Is this a movie? That is where I worked. That is what we did. That is what we saw. And that thing was on fire for most of the night because it was melting the paint off of the two cars next to it. By the time the fire department actually got the fire out, it was nothing but charred remains of a car. You could only just see just the metal. That was it. That was it. And that's where I worked. And so I thought to myself, I can work anywhere, man. I see people blow up cars. I'm going to Nashville. I'm going to work at this middle school. That's nothing. I can't wait. That's fine. And then I got to this school, and then I realized very quickly I'm in over my head. I thought I could. I thought because I came from this one school where gangs were, you know, the thing, that I could just walk into the school in Metro and be like, all right, kids, listen to me. I'm tough. I've seen kids blow up stuff. We're cool. No, it did not work out that way. And so immediately I realized that I needed to do something because these kids were not listening to me. They did not appreciate the things I was giving them. I was not connecting with these kids. And I was like, oh man, certainly I've done something wrong because I should be able to teach them, and I'm not able to teach them. And this is where I realized I had to do something. But how was I going to do something different? How was I going to change? Because their education depended on me connecting with them. So this is how. I'm asking all these questions. I need to figure out, how am I going to change? How's this going to happen? I wanted to show you a quick little video, and it comes from Rory Sutherland. And he has this video, and it talks about psychological perspectives and how these psychological solutions can actually make a larger impact than other solutions where we only ask engineers to come in and reconfigure something, and we put a lot of money into it, when a lot of the times you can just do something psychologically and it'll help to transition. And that is what I had to do when I was going into this. It's actually fantastic. It's a great TED Talk, and really thinking about how perspective is everything. So in education, we're always complaining about, I don't have any resources, I don't have enough time, I don't have this, right? Isn't it everything is I don't have? And that's exactly how it is every single day, and it's never gonna change. That is how it is. We don't have. We work with very little resources, and we work with what we have from day to day. That's true, and I want you to just go ahead and accept that. But what you don't have to accept is that you can't do things with what you are given. So I might not have the best that I could ever possibly have. I might not even have the appropriate size classroom for the things I want to do, but I'm going to think about my perspective and how I can think creatively outside of budget cuts and what I'm going to do with my kids. And that's what perspective being everything is all about, and that's what changed it. So for the three major components of the competitive teaching model, for my competitive teaching model to work with my students, my population of students, I had to really think about how I was going to tackle behaviors, how I was going to connect with my students. And I did some research and I found all of these things. So the three things that will work with your competitive teaching model is the need to win, the need to belong, and the need to engage. You want your kids to win, belong, engage. Win, belong, engage. We love winning. Y'all, why do we play the lottery? Come on, go ahead, tell me. Why do we play?
We want to win.
We want to win. All right, we want that money. And even when you don't win, but you win a little $5, you go to Publix and you're like, I won $5. Here's my little $5. Thank you. I'm gonna buy some more tickets with the little $5 that I won from this little thing. Okay? Why do we like receiving free things even when we don't need the things that we receive? You ever go to a conference and they're like, here's your free baggie, and they give you something in there and you get excited. You're like, let me look through my baggie of things that I have. Oh my gosh, is that a magnet? Oh my gosh, is that an ice scraper for my car? I can't wait. This is great. I don't know what I'm gonna do with this thing. What is it? I don't know. Is that a juicer? I don't know. It's great. I love it. I love that I got this whole baggie of things. Here's another bag to add to my other bags, and I have several of these bags because I go to lots of conferences. I don't really need them, but I'm excited every time I get a bag. Why are we so excited? It's because we think we're winning. We got something and we didn't really have to do much for it. I won this. I'm successful just from getting this bag. This is something for me. We love winning. What's better than winning? Winning with others. All right? We love winning, right? Okay, we play sports. We love it. We love that competition, but it's even better when we win with someone else. We have to share that. We're like, I'm so excited. You're excited. We did this together. We're winning with others. That's the reason that 50,000 people showed up outside of Bridgestone Arena. They didn't even have tickets into the Predators game, but they all congregated. We shut down downtown Nashville because we wanted to be in that space, winning together. We were winning. Were we inside? Were we on the ice? No, but we were winning. It was us. We love winning with others. So when you have a classroom, you need to make sure you create opportunities for belonging, engagement, and success. So if you look up here, I've got a couple of pictures. That's actually me right there. I know I blend in. But I was like, this is me with my students. Anything that I encouraged my students to do, I made sure I would do it with them. So if that included dressing up for Tacky Day, well, by golly, I'm going to dress up for Tacky Day. If I say that we are in this together, then we are in this together. At no point do I ever teach in my classroom and say, you do this, but I never expect to do what you're doing. Never. Ever. So even if it's a poetry unit and I say, today we're going to create a sonnet, I'll be up there on the board creating my own sonnet because I will never ask you to do something that I myself will not do. And that goes for modeling expected behaviors as well. I will never say, put your cell phones away and then walk around with my cell phone like this. Don't ever do that. Because remember, for this model to work, you are a team. You are a unit. You must do these things together. And so when the kids came to me and said, can we perform in our pep rally? Sure, we're a team. And even in this pep rally, it was the gold team versus the green team. And I'm highly competitive, and I was on the gold team. And I told my kids, I said, well, if I'm going to be on this, if I put my name on it, we better win. We did, but we better win, okay? So I also model that kind of motivation, that engagement. Like if I'm gonna do something, I'm gonna do it with all of my heart. I make sure I do that for my kids. And then not only do I do it for my kids, but I do it for my teachers as well. So this is our academy, our old academy at Hillsborough High School, and all of the teachers, we were dressing up for White Day, and it was our game, and we were representing seniors. So if you're a senior teacher, you got to wear this crown. I was a senior teacher, and all the seniors got to wear the crowns too. But this is us, and I would get us together for pictures, and I'd say, hey, I want us to dress up on Friday, and I want to be the academy that has the most teachers dressed up, and I'm going to tweet it so that they can be jealous and then wish they were like our academy. So anything that I did, it was like with a hidden agenda, is we were going to compete. But every time I did this with my teachers, they bought in, and then they would say, oh, let's take pictures because we all dressed up for this. And then the other teachers in the other academies would say, do you realize that AGHS is always dressed up? We need to dress up. I was like, yeah, you do, because you're slow, okay? Because here we are already. We're doing this thing. So keep that in mind. Every time that you are doing something, implementing it, you also want it to be very similar to what you do. All right, so let's talk about motivation and engagement. You're like, okay, Leticia, thank you for this information, but where is the research? So check out the research and you tell me how important this is and how you can implement it in your class. So according to Skinner and Belmont, engagement refers to the intensity and emotional quality of children's involvement in initiating and carrying out learning activities. So children who are engaged show sustained behavioral involvement in learning activities accompanied by a positive emotional tone. When kids are motivated in your class to do what they need to do, what they're going to do for you is behave, because we're always complaining, well, they don't behave and they don't do this and they don't do that, because we always like to put the blame somewhere else and we don't like to reflect on ourselves. But if you create an environment where kids are motivated and engaged, you cut back on that behavior because they actually want to do what you present. And the positive emotional tone here is important too, because they're going to come in, they're not going to say, oh, I hate you and I don't want to do this. They're going to come in excited. And you want your kids to be excited. Never do you want for your kids to come into your classroom and be like, God, I hate it every day I come in here. Who would ever want that, especially since they spend so much time with you? So when you are creating your lessons, make sure you understand your students. Make sure you understand who you are presenting this information to, and that will make all the difference. Motivation and engagement continues. So according to Edmonds and Bauserman, motivation is frequently made the difference between learning that was temporary and superficial and learning that was permanent and internalized. So eventually, what do we want our kids to do? We want them to learn this information. We want to step away from them. We want them to progress without us, and we want them to keep that information up here. If they're going to do it, they have to be motivated and engaged. Competition must be crafted. So I'm not going to read you this quote, but essentially what this quote is talking about is that the way that the competition is crafted makes a difference. So people don't always like to work together unless they feel that they can be successful. So I'm not really going to get in this group unless the outcome means I probably will be successful. If I can do it by myself and do it better by myself, well, I'm going to do it better by myself. But if I feel like I can work with these people and I'm going to be successful, then that's what I'm going to want to do. And so that's why competition in your classroom has to be crafted. And I'll give you a couple of examples of the ways that I crafted it to ensure that my kids felt like they were going to be successful. And then one of my favorite sociologists from the 1800s, Emile Durkheim, talks about how everything that we do as individuals, even when we think we're doing it for ourselves, is actually for the benefit of the society. And everything we learn, even though we think that we're doing it upon ourselves, is actually something that we've already learned in a group, because we are humans, and in human nature, we must survive and succeed as groups. We are units. We are unified. We have to progress together. That's why we love our families, because we are social creatures. We must be with others. And so when you are having this competition crafted in your classroom, make sure that your students are doing this competition with others and that they are moving with others, because we are social beings and we like to be with others. So don't work against what nature tells you. Work with it. All right, so when I was crafting this in my classroom, I liked to do color-coded grouping. The fastest way for your students to see that they're part of a unit is to color code. So I would take duct tape and the best colors possible, you know, funky colors, and I would line off groups of seats. Normally I'd do three groups, and so you'd have about 7 to 8 kids in every little section of the classroom, and they would know that they were part of that team. So I'd say red team, yellow team, green team, or pink team, blue team, purple team, whatever duct tape it was. I would have the duct tape on the board in their colors too, so they could know, hey, my team color is red, my team color is this, my team color is that. Every time they did something successfully as a group, they earned points. I would put it on on the board. You want them to see it on the board. You want it to be visual because that keeps them understanding like, okay, this is my goal. My goal is to earn this many points. For me to earn this many points, I need to work with my team to do this, this, and this. We get points. At the end of every single week, the team that had the most points would get a prize. And it was nothing out of my pocket. I know teachers don't make that much, but I'm telling you right now, I spent maybe like, I don't know, $10 a week to get them chips, like just little bags of chips from Sam's Club. And the kids loved it because why? Because kids love to eat. I mean, come on, it's not only kids. I love to eat, okay? So if you're gonna give me free food, I'm gonna be like, I'm there, thank you, I love free food. The kids love free food too. Like the best way to make them happy is to just to meet that need, you know? So I would have these snacks prepared and the winning team for the week that had the most points would get a snack. So they'd get to pick out their chips and they all like hot chips. They're like, I want the flaming Cheetos. Okay, don't worry, I got you the flaming Cheetos. And they get to pick there. Or sometimes I would bring lots of candy. And so if you were answering questions and you were doing great from day to day, I would hand out candy. They wouldn't know when I was handing it out, but it would just be like, hey, that was fantastic. I'll toss you some candy. All of those little things where they feel like, okay, I'm winning. I'm doing something great. I'm doing something. The other thing to crafting your competition is that you have to make sure that it's fair. So I would put these groups together based on ability level. I knew where my kids were, and I never put all of the highest performing kids in one group. That's mean, so that the other kids can sit there and feel bad about themselves. No. So watch out when you're grouping the students. Make sure you're grouping them and giving them a diverse population of students to work with. The other thing that I did is I changed the groups. So if you get to win from week to week, after 4 weeks, I would change the groups. Because sometimes you'd have one group that would just mesh really well, and even though they might not have been on the highest level, but because they worked so well, they were such great collaborators, they were able to like win and win and win. And so I would make sure that I would change up the groups every 4 weeks so that eventually by the end of the year, every single kid had managed to win. And remember, we love winning, and we love winning with others. So by the end of the year, every single kid had definitely gotten a prize, probably several prizes. And you have to do this if you want them to continue to want to participate. And you have to do this so that they can feel like they've accomplished something. And just having that building of self-esteem helps your students progress, because instead of them feeling like, oh, I don't know anything, so I won't try, they feel like, okay, whatever is happening in Ms. Skae's class, I know I can do it, because if I don't know something, I can ask my partners within my group. And then even if I don't know, I can ask Ms. Skae, but I know that it's a safe place for me to get what I need. If you look right here, not only did I color code my groups, change the grouping, I made sure that everything I did was structured very, very much like very expected. So anytime that they walked into my classroom, the students had to immediately grab their own folder, sit down, and I had their bell ringer or their vocabulary work ready for them. So they would grab it, sit down instantly. This is called structure. Kids say at first like, oh my God, I don't want to do this, and why we're always doing the same thing, and we just want some free time. No, they don't. No, they don't. Because when you do give them free time, they're like, this is so boring. I can't believe I have to sit here for 5 more minutes. Okay, so just don't. Give them structure. They'll complain, they'll say they don't want it, but really they love it. So when you give them the structure, what that does is that shows them that you're prepared, number one. So you don't ever want them to think that you don't have your stuff going on. You do have your stuff going on. Look at how well I have it lined up for you. The other thing that it establishes is that there are routines. Kids feel safe when they know what is happening, okay? So I have an agenda. Every day, the kids walk in, and I've always taught this way, they always know what's going to happen today because they glance at the agenda when they first walk in, and they know what they're going to be doing. That alleviates some of that stress. Just the same way that Rory Sutherland said that I just need to see that red light and the countdown so that I can know when I can go. That alleviates some of that stress because I know what is happening next. I know when it will happen. The same thing for the agenda in the classroom. Here's what you're going to learn today. Here's when it's going to happen. Here are my expectations. See, I've already laid it out for you. Now get to work. And that's exactly what we would do. So every day they'd come in and they would normally have a vocabulary bell ringer or they would have an ACT warm-up. And this is even with middle schoolers. And you're like, Ms. Skae, what are you doing teaching middle schoolers ACT warm-ups? Well, I know that they don't take the ACT until later on in high school, but here's the thing. If I can get them learning some of the tricks to the ACT with little problems and sections directly from the ACT website, and the 7th graders can do it at in the 7th grade, why wouldn't I want them doing it? It's practice. I'm teaching them little tricks. I'm hoping that when they get to the next grade levels after me, that those teachers will continue to instill some of those tricks. And by the time they take it in junior year, they better be pretty doggone good at it. But I teach them in 7th grade, and I have yet to have complaints. So I even teach them in 7th grade. Vocabulary bell ringer, so well, very important, especially in that in my school that I originally started teaching at here in the Nashville area. It was really difficult because the kids were far behind in reading comprehension. And the biggest thing for reading comprehension, if you want to raise reading comprehension, you've got to raise their vocabulary comprehension. They are so closely tied that they're actually difficult to research separately because they go so well together and they work with one another. It's hard to piece them apart. So I had to build in vocabulary lessons every single day to get my kids where I needed them to go, so that they could understand what they were reading when they came to the end of the course exam. I have engagement charts, and so what that means is not only would I give out bell ringers and the kids already had that stuff ready for them, but I had this beautiful clipboard and my kids knew it. They're like, she got a clipboard, and they knew exactly what my clipboard meant. As soon as I grabbed the clipboard, that meant I was walking around to every single group and I had everybody's name lined up on this chart. And I would put a star if you were doing what you were supposed to be doing. If you weren't doing what you were supposed to be doing, I would leave it blank. And you knew that if you got your little star on your chart, that, okay, that means that my whole group is gonna get a point if all of us are actively engaged in our bell ringer like we're supposed to be. Miss Skae is gonna put a star next to everybody's name in the green group. She's gonna walk over to the green group and give the green group a point. And I never had to say anything. I just had my chart, and they knew. So as soon as they saw me walk around, they were all like, because they wanted to make sure they got their point on the board. And if you had somebody who was off task, this is what happened every single time. Skae's coming. Make sure you got that. And they would police themselves. I never had behavior problems after this because they policed themselves. And because you don't want to be left out, you're like, okay, my whole group is working. I'm going to manage this behavior. Did I have some areas and times here and there where you had at least 1 or 2 students who were just like having off days? Of course I did. But did the students manage themselves where I had to just continue to teach and the stress of management was off of me? Yes. So that's why you have to build this classroom and make sure everything is structured, because they knew my procedures. They were like, she's walking around, I want to earn my points. I like to do freeze frame tableaus. They're really quick ways to assess students, and I would have judges come in, so I might ask another teacher to come in and I'd say, we're going to do a freeze frame tableau today for the chapters that we've read. Whoever has the best freeze frame tableau, I want to have my objective judge, not just me, somebody else outside of my classroom judge, and then the winning team today gets this prize today. So it's not even about the prize that you're going to get at the end of the week, but for this lesson, the winning team will get this prize. I also used to do that with vocabulary skits, and so I would ask the students to take their vocabulary from the week and then create skits with a partner or partners, and whoever presented the most exciting skit, used all of the vocabulary correctly, would also win a prize. And I would ask for another teacher to come in, or for the reading coach to come in, or for the guidance counselor, whoever I could get who was an objective coach to watch this to help my kids, and that group would win. We also do a STAR, which stands for Select, 3, and Reflect. And then I do a standards chart and posters. So the freeze frame tableau I will show you today. And then the vocabulary bell ringers, I'll show you an example of what I used to do with them. And the STAR, I'll show you an example of that as well. The standards and charts, this is what I used to do. I used to put charts up in my classroom, and my kids would all, depending on which class period, they would pick a name for themselves. And it would be silly names like Little, I don't know, they for a time they wanted to all be rappers, so everything was Little something. So it was like, I'm Little JoJo. Okay, whatever, your name's Little JoJo. So they had nicknames for themselves, and I'd put them on the chart. So they got to pick their nicknames, Little JoJo and so on. And they would put it on the chart. And every time they would master a standard, they would get to put their star up. So I had main idea, central idea, or theme, or I would have vocabulary skills or whatever. Anytime they figured out a standard that we were progressing through the year, I would give them stars. And I would just say, little JoJo can put a star up. And they knew who they were, but not everybody knew their nicknames. So unless you told someone your nickname, unless you said, well, I'm Lil Boozy, I don't know, whatever. But if you told somebody that, then they would know that that was you. Otherwise, nobody knew who the nicknames were. And so when the stars went up, they felt pride because they knew that was them, but they didn't have to feel ashamed because nobody knew if they didn't or if they did. But they always wanted to see a star up there. It made it real. Instead of having the TCAP or your TN Ready or your EOC, because that is in this space where kids don't actually get to see it. You hear that's your score or whatever, but you don't understand that that's your score, and then it's somewhere else, and the teachers get to look at it, and the principals look at it, and the State Department looks at it, but do the kids look at it? So I would do this as a visual so the kids would at least understand how they were progressing in my classroom without having to see TCAP or whatever, because sometimes they didn't see it. Sometimes they didn't know. Sometimes they were clueless. Only the teachers knew. But I wanted them to know. That's how you get them engaged and motivated. They see, wait, that's how I was like 1 point away from mastering that? Can I do that again and try it, and I'm gonna study a little harder and I wanna put my star up there? Of course you can. So we'll go into our activities, but the way that I do presentations is anytime that I present, I always ask for the audience to work with me as well, because it is really boring sitting and listening to somebody talk for an hour and a half. So we're going to do something together. So if you guys don't mind, I'm going to teach you how to do a freeze frame tableau. And the way that a freeze frame tableau works is that you and your group members, and I'm going to ask for you guys to get in groups of about 4. You might have a little bit, you might be a little bit off, of course, but roughly 4, maybe even 3, that's fine, but I'm going to ask you to get in groups, and you and your group are going to be thinking of a movie scene. Amongst yourselves, pick the movie that you want to do. But you want to be able to do a scene from a movie. And a freeze frame tableau is not acting. You literally freeze, and then we're supposed to be able to guess what movie it is from that frozen picture that you've provided us, that frozen visual. We're supposed to be able to guess. Now, when I do this in my classroom, I'll do it for like a getting to know you session at the beginning of the year, so that the kids get to work in groups right away and get to know each other and then talk about movies, and they love it. They're like, well, let's do Jurassic Park, cuz. Okay, all right, great. And that's how they get to know each other right away, and they love that. But then when I want to use it and assess it later, I let them do it in groups, and I'll say, we just finished this book. I'm giving your group chapter 1, I'm giving your group chapter 2, your group chapter 3, chapter 4, chapter 5, and what you're going to do for me is you're going to think about the main point of that chapter. What was the most critical scene in that chapter? I want you to act it out right here, and I want you to do a freeze frame tableau. And I won't tell the class which chapter you have. We have to be able to guess, and that's how good your freeze frame tableau is going to be, because I can guess what chapter you did from how good you presented your freeze frame. And I assess it that way. And that's another way to capture main idea. Like, do they understand main idea? Do they understand the main point of something? You can see it versus, okay, now let's write a paragraph and let's talk about this. You want to keep the kids moving, you want to keep them engaged, and it doesn't always have to be the same thing. And the more creativity that you put into it, the better. Kids love that kind of stuff. So, I'm going to ask you guys to get into your teams, and then I'm going to force my husband, because he's my husband and he can do this, he's going to be our judge, and he's going to be objective. So he's going to be our objective judge who will judge your wonderful creations, but you guys can get into groups otherwise. I'll say 3, 2, 1, and at 1, you need to be in your frozen frame, and then we're going to guess what movie you are portraying. I have my judge over there. He's going to see how quickly it takes us to guess if we're confused, and hopefully we'll be able to figure out a winner of who made the best freeze frame tableau. When I do this with my students, I actually have a rubric, and I give it to my judge, and the judge has the rubric, and the judge will go through. And so just so you know, we're not going to do that today because this is just for fun so that you can get a feel of how it works. But group 1, let's go. Thank you for volunteering.
I know, we're like ready to go.
All right, group one, going to be in their freeze frame tableau in 3, 2, 1. Nuns? Are we church people? I must not know movies.
Pitch Perfect.
Pitch Perfect, really?
I don't know.
Sister
Act.
Is that 1, 2, or 3?
Oh, no, what about yeah.
Sound of Music.
Sound of Music. Sound of Music.
Yeah.
All right, who is next? Group 2, going to be in their freeze frame tableau in 3, 2, 1.
Oh, it's
Group 3, come on down. Oh, you can do it in the corner as well if you'd like. All right, group 3 in 3, 2, 1.
Charlie's Angels.
All of the teams, thank you. To my judge. Judge, if you were going to judge this, and I know I didn't give you a rubric, could you tell me what you think?
Yeah, I think I would. I think I have to go with group 2 for 2 reasons. One, the willingness to actively collaborate on the front end was impressive to watch. The use of a prop was impressive. And then also, I mean, you guys pretty much got everyone's answer. So.
Ready, team group 2, you get some airheads. All right, so you can see how fun this is to do in the classroom, but also other ways that I like to do freeze frame tableaus is I also like to pair up with the social studies teacher, like a history teacher, and ask the kids to create freeze frame tableau timelines, and I'll stretch it out across the whole room. So you start at the end of the room all the way to this way, and you give the kids, I like to let them work in groups, and you give the kids the times, the actual times that they're supposed to do for the timeline, and then you have them rearrange themselves, and then you say, okay, you guys work it out. Like, this is what happened, put it in order the way that it came, sequence it appropriately, and then I need for you to go create your timeline and go. And I need to make sure that you've done all these things correctly in the timeline, and you can assess it accordingly. So there's different ways that you can use your freeze frame tableau to help kids understand main point, and it gets them moving, and so they're not just sitting all the time. Personally, I don't like to sit all the time. I don't like it quiet all the time, so there's this thing called, I like to call it constructive chaos. And so you might walk into my classroom sometime, and you might say, whoa, these kids are like loud, and they're like over here, and they're over there. And if you asked any of the kids what they were doing, they would all be able to tell you, oh, we're working on this for this purpose, check out our agenda, and this is what we're going to be doing in the next 5 minutes. I like to have timers, by the way. When I talked about structure, I forgot to mention that I pretty much time everything, to the point that when I was pregnant one year, my kids were like, if your baby isn't here on time, are you gonna have a conference with your baby? I'm like, yes, I will. He's on a countdown. Yes, I will. And be like, come on out, buddy. We are timing this. So they were always, they always liked that I time things, but that just keeps the kids they just know that you have an expectation that in 5 minutes, whatever you gave them, it needs to be done in 5 minutes. And here's another trick that I like to do with kids. I will give them something that's incredibly difficult. And I'll say, you've got 20 minutes to do it. And they panic because they're like, there is no way I can do this in 20 minutes. I also know they can't do it in 20 minutes, but they don't know that. So I tell them, you have to do this in 20 minutes. And they're like, we can't get that done in 20 minutes. And I'm like, okay, fine, let's bargain. And then, even though I know it's gonna take them 30 minutes realistically, I let them bargain with me. And then they're like, we can do it in 26 minutes and 30 seconds. I'm like, okay, 26 minutes and 30 seconds. They think they've won over me because they're like, ha, we got her to change 20 minutes. When in reality, I knew it was gonna take them about 30, but I let them think they won. And to them, they did. They're like, yes, 26 minutes and 30 seconds. And I put the new time on the board, and they've won. So just little ways that you can still let your kids think that they've won. It's great. I promised you that I would show you how I do my instruction when the kids would first come in. I hand make these. I would have these ready for the kids, and as you can see, I pulled these words from ACT and SAT, so there's lists on the internet for the most popular used words for ACT and SAT. And there's one specifically that's a PDF, and you can find the 1,000 most used words for SAT. You'll also find some of those words on the ACT list. So I go ahead and combine it, and I would make these vocabulary words come straight from the places that they are going to see. I never wanted to give them vocabulary words that just sounded superfluous. I was like, no, it's not about sounding smart. It's about understanding words for a purpose. Like if these words are always going to be on the ACT and the SAT, they're also going to be on your EOC and your TCAP. So let's go ahead and get these words learned right now so that when you see them later, you can feel like I just won something, which is exactly what the kids would do. They'd come back and they'd be like, Miss Skae, did you know that I saw all these ACT words on the pre-ACT? I was like, you did? That's great. Because that's what I want. I want them to feel like, hey, I already know this, and it relieves that pressure. So you can see right here, I went ahead and I'll give them analogies, I'll give them visuals, and when I would work with the students, this would be their bell ringer. So they already know some of this, they already know this stuff already, and they would come in and they'd be ready to work and they'd start working, and to ensure that they knew what they were doing. I have quiet kids, and so sometimes I would walk over to the quiet kids because they're never going to answer, right? So to ensure that they would get group points, the group would be able to answer, but everybody in your group had to participate. And so the group would be looking at the quiet kid like, oh God, if so-and-so doesn't talk, we're not going to get our points. And so what I would do to make sure is I'd walk over to the quiet kid and I'd say, hey, Billy, like your answer to number 3 is spot on. Maybe when we go over number 3 in class, you should give the answer. And then Billy's like, okay. And so I would just do that, walk over to the quiet kid, walk away, no big deal. Nobody even knew what I said to the kid. And when number 3 came along and I was like, what's the answer to number 3? Billy's like, is it D? Very good. All right, so that's the way that you help those kids that at first don't want to talk, but you know, like your group knows this kid needs to talk if we're going to win our points. So you can see all of these little things I did. I also have because I'm all about giving you information, and I have another thing for you, and it is called a star. Your star is your select 3 and reflect. So I like to do a star for many things. You could have the kids read a chapter from their book. You could have kids do homework and bring back their star. You could have kids read a paragraph, and if you're trying to figure out how to summarize, you can use a star. And this way, when they were earning points, I could assess their knowledge by the 3 words they chose. So if I wanted them to read a chapter and they pulled words out of nowhere, I would either say, either you didn't read the chapter, or you didn't understand what the main idea was because you should have picked these 3 words, and it should have been pretty doggone similar to the words that I chose. Like, for instance, we read a paragraph about pennies and how sometimes really unique pennies are worth lots of money. And so I wanted to teach them main idea. We read that paragraph. It was roughly 6 sentences long, talking about all these different pennies and how they're expensive and so on. So I said to the kids, what's the first word in there? What's the first word we need to put in there? Because what is every sentence literally mentioning? What word? And they're like, penny? I'm like, good, put penny in word 1. And then I'm like, why do we care about the pennies? What's the big deal? What's the big deal with the pennies? Who cares about pennies anywhere? And somebody was like, they're unique. All right, so write unique in word 2. Now you'll have other kids say, well, I wanted to put rare. That's a synonym, no problem. Put rare in word 2. As long as they're getting the gist. I'm not particular about the words, as long as the words do support what their flow is. And I was like, so why do we care about the rare pennies? What's the big deal about the rare pennies? And so you'll have some kids put like expensive, or they'll put money, or they'll put worth, or they'll put value in that 3rd blank. All of those are still capturing the meaning of the entire paragraph, so I was not picky. So like some kid would be like, well, I'd put money because they're worth a lot of money. And then some kid was like, well, I put worth because their rare pennies are worth lots of money. Either way, they're still giving me what I want, which is that pennies that are rare provide some sort of money. That's all I cared about. So then I would read those 3 words and I'd say, okay, what are your 3 words? And this is also something you can do in class real quickly. You could say, what was your group's 3 words? What was your group's 3 words? What was your group's 3 words? All right. If every single one of them got 3 words that still hit the point, everybody gets a point on the board, every single group. And they're excited. And then I let them do it on their own. Then I'm like, okay, now you're going to do it on your own. You don't need Miss Skae for this one. I expect that you guys are going to read this chapter together, and you're going to formulate your 3 words from this chapter together. If anybody needs any of these, I'm going to give you my card, and you can shoot me an email, and you can be like, Skae, please give me this star, and I will pass along some of these things to you if you want them or need them. This is my husband, and you're thinking, okay, we already heard him speak, but you haven't heard this TED talk. And it's pretty stellar too. So I talk about my competitive teaching model, but if you want to see what the competitive teaching model looked like in a high school format, I wanted to show you a couple of the things from my husband's TED talk that'll show you how he implemented his competitive teaching model in the high school format, which is a little bit different from mine. Just basically discussing how you can use the competitive teaching model in the high school level if you want to do classes versus class. All right, we've done this. You did the freeze frame tableau, but now I have one more thing for you to do, and then I promise you're off the hook. But in the same groups that you were just in, I'd like for you to get together and plan out ways that you could possibly implement a competitive teaching model, whether it's in your class, whether it's in your school. How can you implement the competitive teaching model in your environment? So get with your groups if you don't mind. One more time, shuffling around, movement's good. And then we're going to share out. Originally, you guys were group 3. Now you're going to be group 1 in the share out session. So group 1, can you tell me what you guys would like to implement?
Take the lead. Well, I mean, we all kind of talked about our individual classes, but we all agreed that that if you grouped them, and if you had them in good groups. Because I'm a PE teacher, so this is really easy for me to do. But I also was telling them that, especially in PE, there's ones that aren't competitive, and they get they kind of shy away from just PE in general because they don't want to be competitive. And so if you can get them in teams where they can kind of put their input in, just a little bit, then they can kind of feel that success. And that competitiveness with their teams. But like I said, mine's really easy. But my thing was to show how their teams are doing. Put charts on the wall and stuff, and showing their winning percentage and all that stuff. But that was, like I said, we just kind of talked individually. So
I liked it. Thank you. Y'all, if you haven't noticed, I give snaps, and some of my kids, I'm like, if that was cool, you give snaps. All right, originally group 1, but now group 2. Can you guys share out what you came up with?
I liked a lot of things you said as far as students managing themselves. I mean, I'd say that's every teacher's dream is for us to do less management, but I think a lot of things you said are things that I definitely would want to implement. One thing I know that you've probably done with the timer thing, that's something that I've done. Is it the same sound every single time they should stop?
Yes.
And so they know, and so that's the time where you don't even have to say something. The timer goes off, all you have to do is raise your phone in the air and they know, oh, that's the sound, they just stop mid-sentence.
Yeah, and then you can also project it on the screen. I have the online timer, and that has a couple of things, depending on how anxious your kids are. Like I used to have some kids that were like, ah, like watching it count down, and but just a few of them. But most of the time I can use it on kids are always really good about visual cues. They're always like, how much time do we have? And they can look, and then that kind of helps them reorganize themselves too. So you can put it on the board, but the timer it works every time. I don't know. I love myself some timers. originally group 2, but now group 3 in our share out session.
I teach elementary, and so I was telling them how one of my groups decided on their own to make it competitive. Because when I pre-teach vocabulary, there's this part where they have to talk to their partner using the vocabulary words that I've taught them. And so they decided on their own. I have 2 tables in my classroom. So first they wanted to do boys versus girls. Little kids always want to do boys versus girls. And so I didn't have enough girls. So I'm like, well, the team's not even. What are we going to do? And so then they decided, oh, can we do tables? Can we do table 1 versus table 2? Sure. Can we give our group a name? Sure. Of course, songs from the radio. First group was Panda, and the other group was Boss Baby. And so the goal was, whomever can give me the biggest compound complex sentence got a point. You know, if you gave me a very simple sentence like I like temperature, you don't get a point. But if you give me a very stretched out sentence, I would judge and I would give them a point. And you know, sometimes they both came up with really good sentences, so I give them both a point, and they're like, yes! And you would be amazed, because I teach English as a second language, so sometimes I have kids that won't speak. During that time, they spoke like a charm. They wanted to stand up and share their sentence with the entire group, and then when they got the point, they felt such pride. It was awesome. And so that's with 3rd graders.
Thank you for sharing.
We also decided that you need to teach in some graduate courses at different universities that I teach at, because you've got a fabulous array of effective practices.
Wow, thank you. Wow, thank you so much. Yay, thank you so much. I would love to do that. I'm a strong believer that if I ever present, that I need you to take something home. I don't ever want to talk and then you leave here and wonder what you learned. I want you to be able to take something home. Here are some of the fantastic books that helped me learn how to be a great teacher. This one right here by Chartok, Culturally Responsive Teaching. You've got How Children Succeed. That one's really fun because it's got psychological, sociological, and even biological evidence that talks about how children succeed, you know, ways that stress can be good, but too much stress can be bad. And it just kind of guides your thinking on how you're going to structure implementation of anything that you do and how you can understand your students better. That one's a great one. And then Brain Rules by John Medina. One of my favorite things about Brain Rules is that it discusses the ways that we learn. So there's a huge chapter about visuals, and I kept talking like, put something on the board for the kids, do color coding, because the first way that we learn is to look. Okay, that's what we see. So visual cues are really important. John Medina also mentions the amount of time that we use to focus. So as adults, we can focus for about 15 to 20 minutes, focused attention, and we can give all of our effort into that for 15 to 20 minutes, and then we need a little break, or we'll do something, or we'll get off task. And if you think about it that way, I structure my classroom so that I'm doing something that changes every 10 to 15 minutes. Because if adults can only focus for 15 to 20 minutes, then that means that kids are focusing at 10 to 15 max focus. So that's why my bell ringers are 10 minutes. Then I change, work with a partner, 10 minutes. I change, do this, 20 minutes. So everything is moving, and then at the end of the class period, the kids are always like, oh, class is over already? I'm like, yes, because you worked the whole time and there was no lag. So I got some of those little cool rules from just reading about Brain Rules. And that's it, folks. Thank you so much.
The only thing I would add here to support this entire pitch is I've heard soft pushback in the past regarding creating win-lose scenarios for kids. And it's been not only my experience, but also from the research that, especially when they start to look at video game research and the effects of losing in the video game on the brain and how that actually prompts kids to want to try again. So, you know, light receptors in the brain are going off just more egregiously when students have to try again, try again, try again. And then if you think of like a softball scenario, like literally playing in a recreational softball league, you know, win or lose, it's about that experience, that bonding experience. So don't get hung up in the we're creating win-lose scenarios for kids, because Because ultimately what I've seen is even the teams that lose want to rally, regroup, or even mix the group, but whatever, to try again. So you're not only creating some fortitude there for kids, but you're also tapping into something of, when we get the feedback, that helps me try again. I'm getting new feedback and trying again. So don't buy into the win-lose scenario.
Thanks, everybody. I've got some cards for you.